Dale Carnegie once wrote that you can't win an argument. You can't, because if you lose it, you lose it. And if you win it, you lose it. And what he's saying is that even if you triumph over the other man and you shoot his argument full of holes and you prove that he doesn't know what he's talking about and that his whole position is wrong, well, then you might feel fine about that, but you've just made him feel inferior. You've hurt his pride because you destroyed the way he thinks. And that's where you've gone wrong, is you defeated him rather than winning him over. And he will resent you for that. Back in 2010, when I first ran for office, I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't understand how to campaign. I just had no idea how to even get started or what the campaign would look like. But one thing I did understand, though, was that if I was going to win, I was going to have to meet a lot of people. And I was going to have to win them over to my way of thinking. I wanted them to feel like they could vote for me because we felt the same way, we thought the same way. I knew I wasn't going to have near as much money as my opponent, so I had to make up for it by getting in front of people face to face. I decided the best way to do that was just to go door to door. I'd gone door to door plenty of times before. I've done it for my church. I've done it for my business, but I had never done it to talk about politics. And honestly, I wasn't sure how that was going to go, because cold calling people on their own doorstep about politics just sounded like trouble. But I knew that putting in the effort to show people that I was working hard to earn their vote would go a long way in a campaign where I expected to be outspent. If I couldn't afford the cost of a slick media campaign, I could afford the cost of sweating it out in the streets, walking door to door. And when you're willing to put in the work, face rejection, and meet people where they are, you don't just win votes or customers, you win trust. And that's what you need to bridge the gap and get people on board with you. A few months earlier, after I gave a speech in Southwest Missouri, someone came up to me and they said, "Paul, you should read How to Win Friends and Influence People. It might really help you." So I read it. And one of the best lessons from that book is simply this: people will think you're a great conversationalist if you can just be a good listener, if you're genuinely interested in what they have to say. And that lesson right there is powerful, because in life, most people aren't looking for someone to impress them. They're looking for someone to understand them. If you can do that, you can win people's respect, you can win their trust, and sometimes you can win their vote or their business. Now, I didn't know that valuable advice was going to be so valuable to me until one day in my campaign when I knocked on one particular door. I introduced myself and I said, "Hi, my name's Paul Kurtman. I'm going to be on your ballot in November, and I'm just doing things the old-fashioned way, meeting folks face-to-face, and shaking some hands and just asking them what their issues are. So what are your issues?" And right off the bat, the first question that he asked me, he said, "Well, are you a Republican or a Democrat?" I said, "I'm a Republican." He said, "Well, I've never voted for a Republican in my life." He went on, he said, "I voted for Barack Obama, but I'm not voting for him again." And right then, I thought, okay, this guy has seen the light. Maybe he's had a change of heart. Maybe he's come around to being a Republican or at least an independent. But then he said, "I'm not voting for Barack Obama again because he's not doing everything he said he would do." And that's when I realized, oh boy, he doesn't think Obama's gone too far. He thinks he hasn't gone far enough to the left. And he just kept talking, and it became clear to me he was like reading through the planks of the Communist Manifesto, talking about everything he believes. And I thought, if Barack Obama's not far enough to the left for this guy, then I'm definitely never going to get his vote. But this guy just kept talking. And so I listened politely, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this is a total waste of time. I need to be out there finding people who might actually vote for me. And as I'm listening to him, out of nowhere, he says, "And another thing, the government's going to come for my guns someday, and we've got to protect the Second Amendment." And like right then, my ears just like perked right up, because that was it. That was the common ground. And I decided in that moment, I wasn't going to argue with him about anything we disagreed on. I was just going to talk with him on that one area of common ground that we had, the Second Amendment. And that's a lesson in itself. You want to connect with people. Stop trying to win every argument. Find the one thing that you agree on and build from there. Common ground is the foundation of every strong relationship, every good business, and successful campaign. So for the next 20 minutes, we just talked about guns and hunting and the Second Amendment. Turns out he was a lifelong hunter. He's a member of the NRA. He believes strongly, as I did, that the right to bear arms is the final check and balance against tyranny, which is funny when you think about it because he's like a communist. But we wrapped up the conversation and he said, I've never voted for a Republican before in my life, but I'm voting for you. So I thanked him for his support. And I wasn't about to press my luck and ask him for a yard sign. But as I walked back to my car, he came running out into the street and he said, hey, have you got a yard sign I can take? And I said, I sure do. So I opened my trunk and he even took 2 more for his family. That day taught me something that I've never forgotten. People really do have a lot more in common than they realize. We just get caught up talking about the wrong things, trying to win arguments. And that's where we go wrong. I call it meeting people at life level. Too often, politicians or business owners, they talk over people's head, and in doing so, they convince others that they have nothing in common. They focus on the disagreements instead of the connection. But when you find that place where your life and theirs intersect, when you meet them at life level, that's where real communication starts. That's where trust begins to develop. And whether you're trying to win an election or customers, you have to win people over to your way of thinking. The goal isn't to argue, it's to connect. Find the common ground and build from there. That's how you change minds. That's how you keep freedom alive. It's how you keep your business alive. If you're wrong about something, listen to this. That's also how you'll find the truth too. Because when you start with common ground, both people walk away better than they were before. That's how you build bridges. That's how you build trust. And that's how you move people and yourself closer to the truth.